Hey everybody, welcome to another remote learning lesson. I hope everybody's doing well and hope everybody's families are okay. So what we're going to start with today, we're going to start with section 8-2, which is going to be about adding and subtracting rational expressions. One way to think about rational expressions ultimately is they are algebraic fractions. So they're fractions that have variables in them. So what we're going to do today, we're going to kind of start small. What we're going to do is we're going to add and subtract rational numbers and rational expressions that have common denominators. Remember that in order to add or subtract fractions, we need a common denominator. So we're going to start with ones that just have a common denominator. And then after that, to get us ready for tomorrow's lesson, we're going to focus and isolate a skill on determining the least common multiple of numbers and of monomials with variables and things like that. All right. So to get this going, 4/5 plus 3/5, we have a common denominator. The denominator does not change. And of course, 4 plus 3 is equal to 7. Hooray. Moving on to the next one. Once again, we have a common denominator. So right away, our denominator is not changing. 7 minus 1 is 6. And because we have 6 over 12, we are able to simplify that to 1/2 from dividing both the numerator and denominator by 6. All right, now moving on to slightly more complex looking fractions. We are moving away from rational numbers, and what we now have are rational expressions, and that's because of the inclusion of these variables here. But since both of these have a common denominator already, these are ready to be added or subtracted together. So the denominator is not changing, and 7 minus 2 is equal to 5. Moving on to the next one. Once again, this looks complex, it looks difficult, but the first thing we want to observe is that the denominators between these two rational expressions are the same. They are both 8x cubed y squared. So all we're going to do is add the numerators together for both fractions. Now, because these are not like terms, we are just going to put them together in the same fraction. Okay, we can't add these together because they're not like terms, and so we are going to leave this fraction as it is. Moving on. All right, if we look at example number 5, all right, once again, we have common denominators here. So right off the bat, when I go to write my next line, I'm going to write that denominator there just to remind myself it's not changing. Now, you don't have to do this step, but I want to show you that what we're doing is everything goes up in the numerator and we're adding. So we're adding this x plus 5. And in this particular example, we do have like terms. And so we are going to combine them. We have a 10x plus a 1x, which of course you guys know is 11x. And then we have a negative 7 plus 5. Negative 7 plus 5 is equal to negative 2. And folks, that is it. We are going to leave this fraction as it is. All right. We simplified the top, we combine like terms, and we keep the denominator the same. Moving on to the last one. Our first observation here is we have a common denominator. X plus 2 in parentheses, x minus 5 in parentheses. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to write my denominator in. Okay. Now, one thing we got to remember when subtraction, we always got to be careful. So subtraction is going to distribute over that. And so what that gives us is the 5x plus 4 from the previous fraction, and then minus 2x plus 7. The last thing we're going to do is we'll combine like terms in the numerator. 5x minus 2x is 3x. 4 plus 7 is 11. And our denominator, once again, stays the same. Oh, you can't see that. Now you can. All right? So with the same denominator, all that changes is the numerator. Okay? Now, for our last skill, we're going to focus on determining the least common multiple between two numbers and then between two monomials. Now, you certainly may already be able to determine that what the least common multiple is between 6 and 9 is, but I want to go through a process that is going to help you determine the least common multiple as things get more complicated. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to list all of the factors of 6 and 9. The factors of 6 are 2 and 3, and the factors of 9 are 3 and 3. So what we're going to do, we're going to circle common one-to-one factors. And so right off the bat, 3 is a factor of our least common multiple. So anything that's in common, we're going to circle and we're going to bring down. Any factor from each side that is not shared in common on the other, notice I'm putting rectangles around them, those are going to also come down. So if there's one shared in common, only one version of that comes down, and then anything that doesn't have a match also comes in. And of course, 2 times 3 times 3 is equal to 18. So the LCM would be 18. All right, just one other example. If we had 8 and 15, and we list the factors, 2, 2, 2, 3, and 5, none of these have any match from one side to the other. So this would be an instance where they're all getting these rectangles put around them, and they all need to come down. When you multiply those 5 factors together, you get 120. And so the least common multiple between 8 and 15 is 120. All right, so for the last piece, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a more complex situation, but we are going to employ or use the same exact technique that we just used in this context that we're already familiar with. So first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these monomials and we're going to list and stretch out all of the factors. Okay? Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to look for and circle any factors that are shared in common between each monomial. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have a 2 that's going to come down. I have 2 factors of x that are also going to come down, and 1 factor of y that's going to come down. Now that I've done that, I'm going to put a rectangle around anything that's left over and bring down each of those. Right, this 2 came down, this 3 came down, and these 3 factors of y came down. I'm going to put it all back together, 2 times 3 times 2, x times x, and so on. And that gives us a least common multiple of 12x squared, y to the 4th. Last one, we have 9b c to the 3rd and 15b squared c. So we list the factors. We identify factors that are shared in common, and we bring those down. So I brought the 3 down, I brought a factor of b down, and I brought a factor of c down. Everything that's left behind is going to get a rectangle around it, and I'm going to bring them down and cross them off as I go, just to keep make sure I'm keeping good track. And then the last thing we do is we put it all back together. 5 times 3 times 3 is equal to 45. We have a b times b, which is b to the second. C times C times C is C to the third. And that's our least common multiple. Thanks for watching, folks. And as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I hope everyone's doing well, and we'll see you soon.